Leia pushed through a tangle of creepers under the cover of darkness and looked up a steep slope to the top of the plateau. She and Han had decided to make their way to the city whose lights they had noticed when they were plummeting toward the planet. There, the 4 spacefarers hoped to find some parts they could use to repair the Falcon. So far, they had not run into the huge creatures whose prints they'd spotted. Up on the plateau, in the brush beyond her line of sight, something roared and leapt from the other side of the hill, landing in thick brush, then clambered off through the trees. Leia stopped, heart pounding. "What was that?" Han asked. "Something alive, about the size of the Millennium Falcon, I'd say. I'll bet it had 5 toes." They began scrambling up the steep hill, grasping roots and the trunks of small trees to pull themselves along. Distantly over the mountains, borne on a slight breeze, came a roaring cry that shook Leia's bones. "It's coming back," Han said with certainty. Come on, you guys, let's have an organized retreat here." But Chewbacca took off down the valley, followed by Threepio, who dashed through the brush as fast as his metal legs would move. They were running toward 2 pillars of stone that pointed upward like jagged canines. Chewbacca stopped, wavering in his steps. Behind the stone pillars stood 4 Imperial walkers. Floodlights blinded them, freezing them in their tracks. "Halt!" The order came over a loudspeaker, accompanied by the boom of blaster cannons that exploded at Chewie's feet. "All of you, drop your weapons and place your hands on your heads." Leia dropped her blaster rifle. Chewie and Han did the same. Better this than whatever lived out in those mountains. 2 of the walkers circled the pillars. Their searchlights played through the trees, then turned back to Leia and the others. "You, droid, pick up the weapons and drop them over the side of the trail." Threepio did as he was told. Han's eyes smoldered as he glared at the walkers. All 4 were 2-person affairs, scouting models, the only size small enough to maneuver through this mountainous terrain. "Turn around and head back the way you came," one pilot shouted. "Where are you taking us?" Han demanded. "By what right? This is my planet." "You're in Warlord Zinja's territory now, General Solo," the pilot said. "Start marching." They had been marching for 2 hours when the attack came. One second they were walking along, and the next Leia heard heavy footsteps rushing behind. The 2 walkers on the flanks got tackled by creatures much taller than the 7-meter transports. Something enormous behind Leia smashed a walker using a huge club, grabbed the walker next to it, and tossed all 3 tons of its armored hull toward a rock, where it crashed in a heap. A gunner kept firing into the air as the beast clubbed his walker, smashed it again and again, and in the gruesome blue actinic flashes, Leia saw the beast, and her heart nearly stopped. It stood 10 meters tall and wore a protective vest of woven ropes with bits of stormtrooper body armor tied on it. Yet in spite of its attire, there was no mistaking those oddly grotesque arms, the curved fangs, the bony headplates. She had seen one before. It had been smaller than the ones here, perhaps only a juvenile, but it had seemed enormous at the time. In the prison beneath the palace of Jabba the Hutt. Rancors. Han yelled, turned to run, and tripped. Chewbacca took off through the woods, and one rancor chased him and threw a weighted net. The net knocked the Wookiee to the ground. In pain, Chewbacca remained on the ground, holding his ribs. Leia stood, heart drumming, frozen with fear. Yet the sight of the enormous beasts was not what frightened her. On each of the 3 giant rancors sat a woman. One of the riders wore a high-collared tunic of glittering red scales, and over it a supple robe made of leather or heavy material. On her head she wore a helm with fan-like wings. Leia knew she was in the presence of someone strong in the Force. The woman swung an ancient Force pike overhead, motioning for Leia and the others to stay. "Who are you?" Leia asked. "Is this how you form your words, off-worlder?" The woman was using the Force to communicate. Leia nodded. The woman gave orders to her 2 companions. One of them scurried down from her rancor and began gathering weapons from the corpses of Zinja's troops, while the other urged her rancor over to Chewie. The rancor untangled the injured Wookiee from the net and carried him in one hand. "It's okay, Chewie, they're friends. I hope," Han called. The woman with the Force pike leaned over Leia, pointed at Han and Threepio. "Keep your slaves marching, off-worlder," she said. "We will take you to the Sisters for judgment."